Hello everyone, this is Chris Surface here with SDI course FTE 217, week 7's assignment. This week we're talking about trigger work, when it should and when it should not be performed, problems that can occur when it is performed, and what constitutes improper trigger work and ways to avoid it. So necessary trigger work should be performed only when the fire control group, such as the trigger itself, is damaged. Other reasons it can be to lower the weight of the trigger to improve the trigger feel, which is more for competitive shooting. The trigger weight is the weight at which it takes to disengage the sear face from the trigger itself, and then the trigger feel is how it feels as the faces slide across each other and disengage. Personally, I don't think the trigger weight should be lower for most applications. It's a little bit different for competitions or long range shooting when you don't want a lot of pressure to cause your accuracy to be off. So one thing about lowering the trigger weights and stuff like that, this can lead to things called drop fires. If you don't know what a drop fire is, where the firearm accidentally fires when it's either dropped or bumped really hard, which can cause a negligent discharge, and then it can either strike yourself or strike somebody else, and that can cause legality issues. So what constitutes improper trigger work? That's anything that hinders the trigger and the fire control group components. This is going out of factory specifications. So one of the best ways to avoid all this in general is to just do work that is within the factory specifications. If it only calls for no less than 3.5 pounds of trigger pull, do not go below that. That's the safe weight for the trigger itself. Now, as for part 2 of our assignment, we're talking about perform a detailed inspection of our AR and articulate what we're looking for. Okay, so here's my upper. I went ahead and disassembled this off camera to save some time. So in here, what's nice about this handrail is I can actually look in here and see my gas block. On my gas block, I want to make sure everything's tightened down the way it should be. There's nothing that's coming loose. The gas tube itself's not damaged. The gas block's in place. Then I'll flip it over here and I will look at the barrel. Look down the barrel. I can see down the barrel. I don't see any debris. There's no pitting or anything that I can see. I'm also looking at the locking lugs inside of here for wear and damage. So that's the majority of that. You'll look in here, the gas tube also goes through. You'll make sure it's not damaged as well. You want to see if there's any kind of uneven wear or anything that you notice is bad inside of here. Then you got your bolt carrier group. On top of that, you got your gas key. You want to make sure there's no damage, no debris. It's tight. Everything's where it should be on there. You don't see any kind of debris or damage or excessive wear on this. Same thing with your bolts. On your bolt here, you want to make sure your rings are good. Make sure there's no damage here where the firing pin goes in. You want to check your ejector, make sure it's got tension to it, which I can push on it there to make sure it does have spring tension. If it moves a little bit, it's pretty tight. Same thing with the extractor. You want to make sure the extractor is not broken and it's functioning properly. You also want to look at the locking lugs on here, make sure they're not damaged as well. Then you got your firing pin. You want to make sure the firing pin's not damaged. There's no broken parts. It doesn't have any kind of carbon or debris or anything built up on it. You got your buffer spring and buffer here. You want to make sure it's not broken. There's not any kind of bad wear or anything on it. Everything looks good on this one, except it's all brand new, so there shouldn't be any issues. Your charging handle on this one, you can see where it's already kind of rubbing a little bit from me racking it back and forth. That's going to be normal. It's eventually going to break into it. I might try to polish it up a little bit so it doesn't keep doing that. And then here we got our lower. Here on our lower, you want to make sure everything's engaging the way it should be, which we'll go over part of this in part 3 here as well. But so for part 3, I'm just going to jump into part 3 here. Part 3 is we're checking the safety system and disconnector on here. So right now I have it on safe. This should make sure that your trigger doesn't disengage and allow the hammer to go forward. I'm gonna put my finger here. If it does, it doesn't go forward. As you can tell, it's not going anywhere. So now I'm gonna put it on fire, and it should disengage and allow the hammer to go forward, and we'll see. And there it does. It let it go forward. Okay. So now when you get done with that, to check everything, make sure it's gonna function the way it should, you want to pull it back and you'll hear it lock in place and it resets the trigger. And again, if you want to just double check it again, go ahead and put it back on safe, try to fire it, nothing happens. That's how you check the safety and the disconnector on that. Now finally on to part 4. It says to articulate what you believe will be the easiest and most difficult parts of making repairs and alterations to the AR platform. What's nice about these AR platforms is most of these components you can get relatively easily online or from a lot of different manufacturers and distributors. So a lot of these components can just be swapped out. A couple things that I believe are going to be harder to work on, and that's going to be your gas system itself, because if the gas blocks out of alignment or out of adjustment, it can then cause it to not fire properly. You won't get failure to chamber, failure to eject, and all those things can happen. And then the other thing that I think is more difficult to work on too is that's going to be your actual trigger control groups, or your fire control group itself. These are here. If you have to modify them or anything, that's where the issues come in. Again, like I talked about earlier with the legality, if you go to modify these and you do something that causes some issues and allows drop fire, something like that, you're liable for that. Now, if you're just putting a drop-in trigger, they're fairly simple. They just pull a couple of pins out of here, drop that in place, and put the pins back in. Potentially swap the safety out on that as well, but you always want to make sure you don't ever want to modify like the safety or anything like that. So, but that's going to be, like I said, the two biggest ones that I see when it comes to altering the AR platform. And that'll be it for this week.